Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Audrey. I'm your Crone, and this is my cup. And welcome to Cup of the Crone. So today we're actually going to talk about the Egyptian deities. This is one of the most researched of all the deities, and I want to go through a quick briefing of all of them, along with one really big story that goes by all of them. But a couple of books that I'm going to reference later today, later in this session. But aside from Greek, they have very extensive following among witches, and although the religious system was different from anything known today, their gods are still very relevant when it concerns of witches, known for assisting like modern spells and worship. And the Egyptian pantheon is not as highly ordered as most pantheons. Many of the gods, give me a second, I'm trying to get my notebook. Many of the gods are part of a cycle. So think of it like the seasons or the moon phase. They're not like the Greek gods where it goes through parentage and marriage, that kind of connection. Although the pharaohs were considered gods, modern witches don't worship the pharaohs. Instead, we worship the primary deities, which we're going to discuss today. And you will see a lot of pharaohs say, I am the morning and the evening star, I am Ra, or I'm Amun Ra, or I'm Horus. And those are things that we're going to get into today. Now, let's talk this. So we're going to start with the beginning, which is going to be with Isis. Isis is the goddess of marriage and nature. She is the wife of Horus. She is also his sister. She was depicted as a very beautiful woman with wings and with a throne as a crown. She's also sometimes surrounded by like cow horns. But she protected the gods of Egypt as children, and as well as wives and mothers. In this fable I'm about to tell, or I will tell, she plays a major part of it. So let's go over the next god, which is Nut. Nut is a creator goddess and mother of Horus, Isis, and Set. She's usually depicted as a cow hanging in the heavens and is sometimes shown with the head of a cat. And then there is Sobek, he is depicted as a crockhead. He is the protector of the Nile. He's said to actually be the one that created the Nile. And he is the god of like military power, pharaonic power, the army, and fertility. And he played a really big, because the Nile holds such a deep step of mythology, he was a major player in the Egyptian deities. Now, Thoth is actually one of my favorite gods. And everyone's going to be like, why? Well, he's very calm and calculating. He is actually the god of wisdom and knowledge. He is said to be the one that designed the universe. And he is the mediator between good and evil. He is the one that keeps balance. And I find him incredibly fascinating. It's because he realized the need for good and evil, for Set or Seth and Horus. He is the one that, and Horus. He was the one that was like, okay, there always needs to be balance, which I find incredibly fascinating. All right, Geb is the father of the earth. He is known also to be associated with earthquakes, ocean vegetation, and the ruler of tombs. Now, we're getting to the beginning of one of the gods that plays a major, well, give me a second. So, Isis and Horus are together. Horus is the god of afterlife and resurrection. He is the king of life. And Set actually killed and dismembered him. And we're going to get that together. And flung his pieces across Egypt. Isis, on her wings, found his pieces and put them back together, and then afterwards gave birth to Horus. Seth is, think of him as the Loki of the bunch. He's the rival of Horus. He is the ruler of the desert, or the red desert is what a lot of them are called because of the sunset and the red sun reflecting off the sand. He's the trickster god. He's the god of violence. And you will see him being depicted as a villain in a lot of myth. Horus is the god of the sky, war, hunting. And he is seen as with a falcon head. He is the god of air, kingship, and he is the national patron, basically, of Egypt. A lot of time when gods are like, and also he's the son of Isis and Horus, and most of the time when pharaohs say they're the personification of a god, they usually choose Horus. Now we get to one of my boys called Anubis. Now, if you've seen the episode the Anubis episode before this, Anubis is the god of death and the afterlife. He weighs your soul against a feather, and Mott records it. And he is he's perceived with a jackal head, and he is also associated with mummification. He is, if you want to know more about him, by all means, you can go to that episode. It's on my YouTube page, so there's that. Ra is the sun god. He is the creator god. He is also a creator god. He has no father or mother. He created himself. He is also a god of the underworld, and also depicted with a ram's head. He's also associated with cobras, and he is known to be the father of the gods. Okay. And a couple of gods that I would like to name, there's Bastet, which is the goddess of warfare and cats. There is Hathor, which is both the mother goddess and the goddess of love and sexuality. She's usually depicted as a cow or a woman wearing a sun disk surrounded by cow horns. She's also associated with the sky and snakes. Her father is Ra, and she is known to be the mother of the pharaohs. There is Gachmet, which is the goddess of war and healing. There's Ptah, the god of creation and craftsmen. And now we get to Amun-Ra. So, Amun-Ra is the god of the wind and the king of gods. He is known as the Hidden One, and he's the creator of everything. Now, you see later in mythology where Amun-Ra and Ra kind of merge as one, but no. There are two different people. And I'm about to tell you the story of how Horus, and how the whole him and Seth happened. Hang on. So, of course, he was the first king of Egypt, and he's the god of the underworld, the law, and of harvest. But he's probably the most important god in the pantheon, but he was murdered by his brother Set and thrown into the Nile. Isis found his body and breathed life back into him, and she conceived Horus with his semen. Set then cut his body into 14 pieces and scattered them throughout Egypt. Isis again gathered his parts and buried them. He is one of the few gods depicted as human and usually holds a crook and flail. He is usually depicted in mummy form. Egyptian mythology, like any type of religion, was so definitive for its worshippers, but also it was said the pharaohs actually are gods and came from the gods. Now, a couple of books that I have to help with this, which of course I've shown before: the Egyptology Handbook, Egyptian Myths, and Egyptian Mythology. And the way to look at these gods is to look at them being gods of stages, okay? So there's one god, like for instance, multiple gods are gods of the underworld, but Anubis is the god of the actual judgment and the mummification process. So he handles that. Then it's known that Horus actually guides the pharaohs through the obstacles and the gates. And Mot records, and then it is said that then another god actually gives the final judgment of who goes to the sky, and then who goes into the pit of shame and guilt. And you have to think of these gods as god of stages. And what exactly they become. Now, also you have to realize is that there are a lot of myths that go along with this. A Book of the Dead and a Book of the Life are really big when it comes to basically their spell books, and the whole is their mythology. This book actually has spells from the Book of the Dead. It has tales of ancient magicians. It has stories of creation, legend of gods. It has the fairy tales, like the tale of the two brothers. It even has hymns, which is like the hymn of Amun-Ra, the hymn of Amen, the hymns of the sun god, Horus. It covers a lot of the stories, and then with this one, it goes over geographics. It goes over like deities, things and concepts, mythical timelines. It goes over the introductions, how it goes from old, middle, new, late. It's like mythological print and non-resources. It's very extensive, and that's one thing that it's hard to take on and explain in one video because it is so much. This is the most researched of all the pantheons. It is a lot to unpack. What I'm giving you guys is just the basics of what each god is, and see if a god relates to you, and if a god is, and see if that pantheon or that god is someone that y'all want to relate to, or it's a jumping off point. It's not something that's going to be super detailed and super it's not going to be like a textbook. These videos are not to be a textbook. It's to give you a jumping off point, to let you be familiar with each of these great deities, and for you to realize where you want to be when it comes to picking a pantheon. Now, I will tell y'all this. We do have a couple more pantheons to go through, and these are some of the most, not really most well known, like the Chinese pantheon, the Hindu pantheon, the African pantheons. Those are what we're going to go through next. Now, and I'm going to give you a parameter of what each of them steps up. Like, for instance, like the Chinese pantheons have to do with like Taoism and Buddhism. It has to do with the 8 immortals. Then like the African pantheons have to do with Vondun, and it has to do with Centuria, and those have to do mostly with like mostly the spirits. And then of course the Hindu gods, which they have to do with like the Trinity and and the 3 gods that are most important after Brahman. And I'm looking at my notes, so bear with me on this. And then we're going to go through and how do you know a pantheon is right for you, and picking a pantheon and what goes into picking a pantheon. And you will never know what pantheon will spark your interest. Like, or what God calls to you. Honestly, I did not think that I would have Lilith call to me, or Anubis. So these are jumping off point. And if something sparks your interest, research it. There is a reason why I give you guys books. There's a reason why I give you guys other divination materials to dig into when it comes to these things. Was because I want you to learn for yourself. That's the only way you're going to learn and get to know your God. Or get to know a pantheon. So that's what I highly encourage. You want to know their tales. You want to know them. And there's a lot of these gods that I personally am not familiar with because I am not one of their followers. So that's something, but I do keep records of everything, and I try to teach as much as I can. So keep that in mind. If there's something in there that you find extraordinary or amazing, or a God that you strike a chord with, research it. Dig deep into it, because that's the only way you're going to learn. Well, that's about it. I'm so sorry that Maybon did not drop. For some reason, it just didn't. I had it to release, but apparently it did not release. So I'm trying to figure out what happened there with the YouTube. So bear with me on that one. Thank you guys so much for bearing with me while I'm going through all this and trying to figure out the schedule. Now that I have a husband in the house, it's very different. So you guys, I'd like to say thank you, and I hope you have a great day. Take it easy. It's Tuesday. So the only thing I can say is marry me, marry your part, and marry me again. Have a good one, guys.